What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Second Guessing with Stress, and I'm your host, Garrett Williams, aka Texans commenter. And today we're joined by a very special guest, former Texans receiver. He was also in the front office, and now he's a new author, JJ Moses. JJ, how you doing, man?
Garrett, what's happening, bro? Good to be here and to connect with you, but all is well.
That's awesome. So we already got a couple people in the chat. I got people holding me accountable. T says we're late, and we got BG throwing up the H's. So, and we got Patrick Storm. He says JJ Moses, my guy. Thanks for tuning in, Patrick.
So,
Um,
Patrick,
yeah, but JJ's got an awesome story, and it's kind of funny too. Like we reconnected just on Instagram, organically. I guess he came across my page and followed me, and I messaged him, but we had actually met through Mike Quinn, a former quarterback for the Texans. He had like a youth football camp, and I was out there helping him out. And I think at the time I was still in college. I was a collegiate receiver. So I remember meeting you and getting advice from you and observing you on the field. So it was really cool to meet you then. So it's funny how, things can kind of realign the way they do. So, but I mean, do you recall that at all? I mean, that moment, I know you probably have a bunch of instances where you had a lot of camps and met a lot of people.
oh, I do remember that, Garrett, and it was a great camp with Mike Quinn, of course, and I do vividly remember, connecting with you as well, and it's isn't that ironic, man? Like how life can be like a full circle moment. You just never know who you're going to connect with, who you're going to work with, and but it's cool, man, just to kind of connect with you this evening, man. You're doing big things, and I'm just proud of you and honored, man, just to be on your show. And I see you doing big things, and you're bringing in guests, and so, man, this is like scoring a touchdown this evening, man. So I'm truly honored, man, just to connect with you, man, and just vibe and talk some little football life and keep this thing
Yeah,
going.
well, I appreciate that. And we had talked on the phone a couple weeks ago to set this up, and you were expressing those same words, like great appreciation towards me. And I was like, man, like this is backwards. Like, no, I'm appreciative of you. Like, I'm just a random dude. Like, you're like the actual, icon in a sense. So, but with that being said, obviously, some people may not be as old as myself, and know the Texans history or be as well aware of your career. If you kind of want to just give me a background of like your upbringing, maybe high school, obviously Iowa State, college, and kind of just your journey and how that led to your NFL journey. And it seemed like it wasn't the easiest as well, correct?
Man, that's so correct, Garrett. And it was tough for me because I grew up in a small town in Iowa, and I was always the underdog, man. And so, shout out to all my underdogs this evening, man. Individuals that never took the so-called elevator to success, but instead taking the steps one step at a time to try to reach the pinnacle. And that was pretty much the foundation of who I am and what I stand for. And, life was never easy. I've always been, just an underdog, someone that always had to fight and grind for the opportunity, someone that had to have faith and confidence and that boldness and just even this focus, this prepare to win mindset that I've always kind of grew up with. And again, from Iowa, small town, I went to Iowa State University, played ball in Iowa State for a few years. And then after Iowa State, I was fortunate, to have had the opportunity, to sign with the Kansas City Chiefs coming out of Iowa State. And at Kansas City, was there for about a season or so on the practice squad battling with Dante Hall. I remember he was a return man that I was competing against. Yeah, the X Factor. And so I learned a lot from him. And at that time, Kansas City had, of course, Trent Green as a quarterback. They had Tony Gonzalez, who's a starting tight end. Some of the UT fans remember this name, but Priest Holmes was a starting running back.
He tore up the Texans, bro. I was at that game. Yeah, I remember him.
That's it. So I grew up in that whole era. And then after Kansas City, I ended up going up north for a few hours away from KC, which was the Green Bay Packers, man. And I played for the Green Bay Packers. And at that time, the quarterback was Brett Favre. And we had a wide receiver by the name of Donald Driver. And just a phenomenal team. What's that?
A very underrated receiver.
Very underrated receiver. And Green Bay was amazing, man. But they gave me an early Christmas present. And guess what the Christmas present was, bro? Guess what the Christmas present was when I signed with the Green Bay Packers? So I was there for about maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And they picked me up later on during the season. And on December the 24th, I'd already played in 2 games They gave me an early Christmas present on December the 24th. The Packers decided to release me, man. And so they gave me that pink slip, that note in the lockers. You know what that note means? Go bring your playbook up and give it to the coaches. And so I was released, man. Out of all the days, how do you get released on the day before Christmas, man? That's traumatizing. And so anyway, I went from Green Bay, and after Green Bay released me, I ended up signing with the Houston Texans during the offseason, and was here during 2003. Made the team as a starting kickoff and punt returner, and that was a second season for the Houston Texans at that time. And of course, David Carr was our quarterback. Jamie Sharper was the linebacker. Eric Glenn, who's now the head coach for the Jets, was our starting cornerback. Andre Johnson was the rookie that year. He was a rookie in 2003. And so we had a phenomenal team. We didn't have a great record, but we were building. And then after Houston Texans, I ended up finishing up my career with the Arizona Cardinals, in which I went out west with Coach Denny Green, and Kurt Warner was my quarterback. And then, of course, Larry Fitzgerald, Anquan Bolton. So, man, I say all that to say, man, I have had so much just joy, man, and just learned a lot. And it has really shaped me overall, not just as a football player, Gary, but as a person as well. I've learned a lot, man.
Man, that's incredible. Like you just, going through your journey, like, it may have been at the time frustrating to bounce around, but like in hindsight now, it's like you got to meet a lot of different people and you play with some legends. Like you mentioned Brett Favre, Kurt Warner. I mean, come on, that's insane. But like when I hear your story, I can't help but think of another Texan receiver that was also an underdog who was been on my show and who I consider being friends with now is Cecil Shorts. Like y'all kind of have a similar story. He was from a Division II school, so it's a little bit different, but it seems like y'all both kind of, were overlooked. And then also on that note too, from, my research, it said that you were the shortest player during your career in the NFL. Is that correct?
Now, Garrett, everybody's not blessed with your height, man. At 6'2". How tall are you, bro? How tall are you?
I'm 6'1", but obviously I'm missing something,
Yeah, and Cecil, he's funny. I laugh with Cecil. We was on one of the news segments just a few weeks ago, but I think Cecil's like 5'11" and a few something around there. But I'm only 5'6". So just showing you that when I got into the NFL back in 2001 or 2, I was the shortest player in the NFL at 5'6". And so ironically, in 2004 or 5, as I was getting ready to leave out of the NFL, there was another emergence of another football player that was coming on the scene that was 5'6". You want to guess who that player was?
Oh, is
5'6".
MJD or no?
I'm gonna test you guys.
That's not
Who's
MJD,
that?
is it? He's not that short. Maurice Jones-Drew?
No. So this was a return man. He played in Kansas State, all-time great.
Oh, Darren Sproles, man.
Darren
Yeah,
Sproles. So Darren Sproles and I, that's my cousin. We both grew up in Waterloo, Iowa.
Literally your cousin.
Literally my cousin. And also we're 5'6". So it's crazy that as I'm leaving out of the NFL at 5'6", being the shortest guy, and most people don't even know this story, but following me a few years later, of course, Darren Sproles come on the scene. Of course, he blows it up. He's a Hall of Fame type player. But again, it just shows you how a small world this thing really is, man. And so he ended up coming on and, of course, blowing it up in the NFL. But we were the two smallest guys at that time at 5'6".
How did I never know that? That's insane. And so was he drafted, or did he have a similar struggle because of his height? Obviously, he was, at Kansas State.
Yeah, and I think Darren Sproles was drafted, of course, from Kansas State, but his journey was a little different because when you're drafted, I think maybe third, fourth, fifth round, at that time when I was in the Big 12 playing at Iowa State, there were not a lot of guys that was being recognized at Iowa State University. Now, as you look at the Houston Texans now, they got Xavier Hutchinson, they got Higgins, they got Noel, they got all these guys now from Iowa State. That was not the norm. Back in 2002, there were not a lot of Iowa State guys. My senior year at Iowa State, and many of the Texas fans who's tuned in this evening might recognize his name, but my quarterback at Iowa State was Sage Rosenfeld.
The Rosencopter.
And so Sage and I, Rosencopter,
I'm talking about, right?
That's how most Texas fans know him. But so Sage was drafted, and then we also had another player named James Reed, who got drafted 7th round from Iowa State, and then Reggie Hayward, who signed with the Denver Broncos, D lineman, played in Jacksonville. Long story short, we were the 4 guys for the most part that went on to play in the NFL, and so it's ironic that again during my time there were not a lot of 5'6" players that were kind of coming out of the 5'8", 5'9" guys, but when you saw 5'6", that was not the norm. And of course, the game has changed now, and how they're looking and rating guys and putting them on for opportunities.
Well, that's impressive. Like, so like obviously like the size was a hurdle, and it sounds like the school too. Like people think of Iowa State now, but it sounds like back then relative, like it was kind of rare to come out. So like in a sense, like you might have kind of paved the way for these current Iowa State guys to kind of have that ability. Just like Cecil Shorts, it sounded like he benefited from Pierre Garcon coming out of Mount Union, and then all of a sudden now it's just like I guess maybe scouts or teams just don't think of a school or have a certain stigma with them, and then all of a sudden one player can kind of change that rep. So that's an interesting note there. I don't know if you have any
Yeah.
thoughts on that.
Well, I do know right now when you look at a guy, depending on like the odds of making it into the NFL, there's definitely a higher probability of a guy going into the NFL if you're 5'10". If you're 5'10" or 5'11", that's average height. But when you're 5'6", again, breaking it down in terms of the odds against you, that's basically saying 99% of all guys will not make it into the pros. We all know that. Only 1%. Out of those 1%, that 1% of guys that's making it to the NFL, those are guys that's 5'10" and 11 or 5'11" and taller. Okay. But when you're 5'6", just to give Texas fans an idea of how difficult that is, bro, I had a better chance of being struck by lightning. That's not normal. You're not seeing a guy that's 5'6" being a return man, being in the NFL. Even Dante Hall, who we just alluded to earlier, he was 5'8". He was
I was
from
going to
A&M.
ask because like he was shorter, but 5'8", like that's 2 inches.
And yeah, and then you got guys back in the day. Of course, you got like Tim DeWites, who played return man, played for the Falcons. He was 5'8", 5'9", but not really did you see a guy that was 5'6" that was coming onto the scene back in 2001 or 2002. It was unheard of.
Well, you can like almost count on your hand, like, people around your size, which is crazy. And then like, to me, like reading up on you, like is also kind of messed up to me. Like you had a illustrious career at Iowa State, and like I follow you on Instagram, and I think you might have had a homecoming or something. So you were posting a lot of clips, and I was like, man, JJ was a baller, bro. Like you had crazy punt returns, and you like were hype. You were making plays on offense as a receiver. Like you had that swag, and from what I read, you led the team in receiving. You were the team MVP, and you still went undrafted. Like that's tough, man.
You're before your time, and it's like again, we had a great team, a great nucleus, but I was blessed, man. I was a team MVP. I was first team All Big 12 as a return man and as a receiver. And again, you have all those stats and you have all those accolades, but at the end of the day, when you're in the 2001, 2002, especially being at Iowa State, there were not a lot of scouts at that time taking a chance on that. They were looking at that time. They were looking at those big prototype receivers, 6'2", 6'3", that can run a 4.40 and
height, weight, speed,
God,
right?
Yeah, and God blessed me with this incredible height at 5'6", and so I had to work with what God gave me, and but again, what it did for me, Garrett? It really brought me closer to Christ. It gave me faith. It allowed me to not rely on what people could do for me, but it really made me just stay focused in my faith, which I began to implement about what my book is about, is having this focus, this prepare to win mindset. And so once I really began to tap into this mindset of not allowing the naysayers or not allowing like the negativity or the setbacks or the disappointments to discourage me. But when I began to have this mindset, I promise you, it immediately came with accolades, opportunities. Like you said, I was the MVP at Iowa State, and even came with an NFL contract. But again, that was something that I really had to tap into because I knew what I was up against and I knew the difficulty situation, but I relied on my faith and God just began to open up doors for me, man. And the rest was history. And so that mindset, again, allowed me to handle, setbacks, disappointments. A lot of times I think life makes you feel inadequate. There's times where you feel or you question your self-worth, or you're not getting noticed, or whatever it is, you feel like you're always the odd man out. Why are you doing all this work but no one's giving you an opportunity? The list goes on and on, and that's in whatever career a person's in. But when I tapped into this mindset, man, it really, really just was a light switch for me, and it came with instant opportunities.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And like, I would assume too, like mindset, whether it's religious based or not, just like that focus and the ability to, block out distractions and be confident. Like that's almost probably got to be a prerequisite to be in the NFL, unless you're just some crazy extreme freak athlete. But I mean, like, you notice like the great ones like Derek Stingley, Kamari Lassiter, whoever it may be, that are good at their position, like the mental side that they have seems to be is what is the big separator. So is that something obviously you would agree with as well?
Big facts. Absolutely. And I love this example, but your mind, man, is so powerful. And I saw this somewhere on social media a while back, but it said something like she won in her mind before she won in front of the world. And it's like a bit like a steering wheel. When we will turn it into the right direction. But again, back to, in my opinion, is to get your mind right. There was this coach that was with me in Kansas City, and he was a strength and conditioning coach back in. Just remembered these words, Garrett. He would always say for every practice, get your mind right. Get your mind right. He'll go to the wide receiver, core, or the defensive back. Get your mind right. Get your mind right. Long story short, that became our motto in Kansas City that year. And of course, Kansas City, I think they started off that season, man, like 8-0 or 9-0, whatever it was, but we were rolling. Long story short, but it was that mindset that I always remember. It's just having that focus, that mindset. If you get your mind right, man, that's the key to anything that you want to accomplish. But that battle starts right here. And again, there's going to be a lot of distractions. There's going to be a lot of scenarios to try to get you off your cue, off your base. And those are those distractions. And, with me being a kickoff and a punt returner, I understood the severity of distractions that comes into a person's life. And check this out. I know I'm talking loud, but this is good because this is so powerful, especially to our fans out there, that's tuned in. But, I read a study, and it said something like 3 out of every 4 workers or individuals in life, they are distracted. And I feel this in my heart, but I feel like distractions can reduce like professionalism. I believe it can affect productivity. And so I believe when there's a system or a book, like my new book, Focus, when there's a program in place, it helps individuals to remain focused. And this stat says that once there's a program or a person's focus, 75% of individuals say this, but they say they're happier. They feel more motivated, but they also feel purposeful. And I believe this, but when a person's focused, that's what enables them to find their true purpose in life. And so that's been my motto. If I stay focused, those opportunities will come to me because I'm doing what I have to do that will kind of propel me in the right direction or where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, that's a powerful message. And like, obviously I think it's a good time to kind of transition to getting into the book, but it sounds like there's parallels to like the field. I mean, like you as a punt returner, if you're not focused, like a split second, that could result in you muffing a punt or getting hit. And honestly, personally, like myself, I think too, like in general, like, obviously athletes, I think a lot of them focus too much on the physical and not enough on the mental. Like it seemed like prior, it may have been frowned upon to like, seek help or, you see a sports psychologist. Now it's very prevalent. And I feel like guys are greatly benefiting from that. So I feel like that was, my weakness. I focused too much on physical and not the mental. And like, as I got older, I like kind of got tapped into all the stuff you're saying, like the power of the mind. I'm like, man, like I was like mentally weak back then, and it probably affected me. And it's just no fault of my own. I just didn't know any better. But with that being said, though, this is your book. I bought it. I tried to be able to read some of it. I haven't been able to. The Texans content has been crazy, but I will get to it soon. But obviously, you've kind of alluded to it. But if you don't mind, if you want to kind of just give like a brief introduction to what it is, and after that, I have a video we can share, a quick video to the audience as well.
Absolutely, man. I love that book, man. It looks like an awesome book to read. And again, you know where
Yeah.
that book came from, and many of us know this, but that book was birthed out of a difficult situation. I had lost my job working in the NFL at that time, and I was working for the Houston Texans, and they had a change of staff, a change of direction of leadership. And so I remember being released. I was a director of player development in 2020. And so part of my role at that time was to prepare guys, developing leadership programs, helping guys as they kind of enter into the National Football League. So I work with players from J.J. Watt, Hopkins. I mean, all these guys, they were amazing. And I continued to kind of build that leadership program. And so once I was released from that particular role, it was devastating because at that time, I had brought in that Focus Prepare to Win program into the National Football League during my tenure with the Texans. And in those 2 years, Garrett, the NFL ranked it the #1 personal and professional development program throughout the whole entire NFL. Upon the release, I was like, man, I didn't see it coming. But again, the Texans had a new direction and new leadership at that time. And so I had to, just move forward. And I remember just kind of, wondering, man, what's next? And so as I'm at home, I began to kind of work on the book, began to strategize, putting ideas together. And before that even happened, I was maybe a few years just in thinking of, man, I would love to write a book one day, a personal professional development. So long story short, I took those same strategies that I used to work with the NFL players on the team, that I used to work with the leaders, talking about effective communication skills, self-awareness, how these personal professional development, and all of those principles that I learned along the course of my NFL experience, and I put it into a book. And once I put it into the book, it was amazing of the feedback and the opportunity that began to open up, which we end up collaborating with the book with different Fortune 500 companies. The book was #1 on Amazon. We collaborated with Nordstrom. They bought books, did book signings in Nordstrom's in the gallery hall, and typically at a department store, they're not doing book signings, but they brought me in for that. We collaborated with Neiman Marcus. We collaborated with BMW. We did book signings at Barnes and Noble. So it has been such a fun ride. But again, we're in this world today where I feel like the emphasis is all about, personal and professional development and leadership. And so the book is really designed to give individuals 21 powerful strategies that will be holistically aligned in terms of helping move forward so they can reach their highest potential. So overall, but it was a joy, and it's been a fun new chapter so-called in my life.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to read it now. Obviously, I think it's probably better that I talk to you first. Honestly, like I was a little bit of a procrastinator, but I think it's better to kind of get to know you and your background. And what I'm kind of envisioning is this book is basically based off your own testimony, so it's got to be easy for you to be passionate about, to promote and relay it to people, because it's all from your own life experiences. It's not like it's some book where it's some other kind of type of book. So I can only imagine what that does for you and how much you actually truly enjoy it. And it's not just something you're saying, it's stuff you went through and you mean it, right? I mean, I'm sure that feels good, right?
Absolutely. And if you do get an opportunity, sometimes I get asked the question, what's my favorite strategy? What's the favorite chapter in the book? And there's one particular strategy that really just came alive to me, and I just had such a fun time just kind of sharing a new principle with people. And probably a lot of people haven't heard of it, entitled sprezzatura, and that's the ancient art of making difficult things look easy. So you might say, what does that mean? What is the word sprezzatura? I guarantee you, if you ask anybody, how do you spell sprezzatura, they wouldn't know. What does that word mean? And basically that
So what
word,
would an example of that be? CJ Stroud scoring a touchdown with 40 seconds left to win the game against the Bucks? That would be an example?
it would kind of be
I didn't mean to
the
interrupt.
caveat
Sorry.
would be this. This is, yes, it could be that, but he's making it, let's just say he wins the game and he makes it look effortless, where it was so nonchalant, so easy. And that really is what the word sprezzatura means. It's making difficult things look easy. And so when you're able to be in leadership and you can make difficult things look easy, that's what management looks for when they're trying to promote people. That's what, if you're trying to make an NFL team, or if you're trying to maybe, go into marketing or sales, when the higher ups or your supervisors, when they could see that you can handle difficult moments and make it look easy, that's the key sometimes that can give you the advantage over someone else. And that same strategy, Garrett, was something that I utilized when I was trying out for the Houston Texans. And I remember when there were a multitude of returners that they had drafted that year. And as a return going down trying to catch the ball, and sometimes you could see the guys, they didn't have that confidence, that swag, they didn't have that thing. But what sprezzatura does, it goes back there, makes the difficult things look easy. And I began to operate in that sprezzatura lifestyle where I was catching the ball, man, making it look easy, talking to the fans. And when the coaches began to see that self-confidence, that's what made them feel like, oh, we can trust this guy in the heat of the battle. And so sometimes in life, I think that's the biggest part when you operate out of sprezzatura lifestyle is, can people trust you in the heat of the battle? Like, can you not flinch, when life gets tough, or you lose your job, or you're dealing with a health problem, or you're dealing with, financial issues, can you still keep your composure? And a lot of times, unfortunately, and when I've developed that sprezzatura lifestyle, that's what gave me the ability to say, you know what? I'm not going to be numb to my emotions. I feel the pressure. I feel the pain. I feel the discouragement. I feel the anxiety. But the key thing is, I'm not going to allow myself to be engulfed in it where it makes me just stop. I'm gonna continue to move forward with the sprezzatura lifestyle, man.
That's touching. I mean, I got to read this book ASAP, man. I could definitely use some of the sprezzatura for sure myself. And yeah, no, I
That's
love that.
it.
But yeah, I mean, if you're ready, we'll go ahead and play this clip here. It's a couple minutes, and then we can still
Let's
talk
do
about the
it.
book. And like I mentioned, it's just natural convo, so we can just go whichever direction we like. But real quick, we'll get this video going. Do you want to
Let's
have our
do it.
faces in the corner, or just put it up on the big screen? It's up to you. I mean, you're not
What do you think? I like the faces in the. I like.
okay.
Only just begun.
That's incredible, man. I'm like, watching that, like, you see clips of you talking in all these public arenas. I mean, you were talking, it looked like at Lakewood Church to thousands of people. Is that correct?
That was amazing. That Lakewood Church is my home church. Volunteering and served there for many, many years, and it's been a place where I found so much joy and just fulfillment in my personal life and professional life, and absolutely. So it's been a great venture, man. And Pastor Joel has been a great leader and a role model for me, and has helped me in a variety of ways in my life and my family's life. And so I'm so grateful. Again, I always tell people, but being able just to have that mindset to serve, whether if it's serving in your community, Garrett, if it's serving in your relationships, serving in your company, whatever it is, when you get into a place of serving others, I feel that's where you continue to go higher and higher in life. And so that has been my motto in life, that I've always wanted to be a server and to help individuals so they can reach their potential. And so when you look at this book, that's really what it's about, is that having that servant type mindset and finding ways to help individuals. Sometimes I might not have the answer, but I love being able just to maybe sit in the pain with them, just to be there to listen, just to be a listening ear. And sometimes that's what a person might challenges, because as I mentioned earlier, whether if you are Black, white, Asian, Republican, Democrat, whatever the case might be, we're going to all deal with this thing called life, man. And this thing called life can be tough. And I love sports because sports kind of numbs things up and it keeps things so neutral. But when you kind of have this mindset of just, with just helping individuals to serve and just to have this gratitude in life, it always helps. And I love this example, but in school, it says in school, we are tested. In school, we're taught a lesson and then tested. But in life, we are tested to teach us a lesson. And so life has always been that component for me, was there's going to be tests. There's going to be times where you're going to be challenged. There's going to be times where things are not going to always be fair. I wish I could tell everybody that life is always going to be easy. You're going to reach your dreams and keep working hard and good things are going to come. But in reality, life is not always that easy. And so when you have some type of support or individuals that encourage you, to me, that's that's part of life, man, just helping you to go through this journey of life, because it's not going to be easy. But when you have people or programs or a book, it just gives you that extra layer of support to help you navigate life. And for me to make it into the NFL.
Man, it's awesome. I mean, and just obviously, I know you briefly. Like, I'd met you at a camp one time, and we've talked on the phone. But like, this interview here, but it's obvious. I mean, like, you're just a very positive. Like, you can't help but like being around you. It's like you just good vibes. Like, I love the positive energy. I mean, not even though I'm not saying most people are negative, but most people like aren't outwardly positive like you are. So, I
Yeah.
salute you for that, and I enjoy it and appreciate it. And then you talking about serving others, and no matter the background of whatever people have, race, religion, whatever color, that we're all going through life together. Like, this may be like kind of a reach or like a weird translation, but like what I've been doing with this social media stuff, like I engage a lot with like hundreds of people, if not thousands of people weekly, monthly. And I don't, obviously
Mm.
I'm online. I don't see anything. I don't see race, color, religion, or anything. But that's been my favorite thing, is to talk and engage with people that I might not necessarily have been connected with otherwise. So that maybe not quite the same parallel, but I just kind of had that thought, and that's something that I've said a lot too. That's what I enjoy the most. So I don't know if that's considered serving others, but sports in this world
Absolutely.
and what we do, it is a distraction. So like for me, it's a distraction, and I'm sure for the other people, it's a distraction too. So not really sure how that fit, but that was just a thought I had.
No, that's a great thought, because a lot of times, we're living in a world today where, and again, there's nothing wrong with pursuing your dreams, Gear. There's nothing wrong when people want to live in a nice house, or to drive a nice car, or to be able to have money to go on vacations. I mean, those are all things that we all strive to work for. But I do believe that when we can continue to find ways to help individuals to reach their full potential, or take time out to want to see other people to succeed, that's when the miracle begins to happen in our own lives. And for an example, I remember my senior year at Iowa State University, and being only 5'6", I had a dream and a desire, to play in the NFL. And again, many of the coaches and agents thought that I was too small to play. And so I remember after my senior year was over with, it was on a Wednesday morning, and my quarterback at the time at Iowa State was getting so many tryouts from many NFL teams, City Chiefs. So Garrett, he calls me on a Wednesday and he says, "Hey, JJ, can you come to our practice facility? I need somebody to come catch some footballs for me." So I said, "Man, absolutely, man. Whatever you need, man, I got you. Let's do it." So Saturday morning rolls around, you guys, and man, my quarterback was doing a phenomenal job. He was throwing the ball with accuracy, and I'm playing wide receiver, and I'm trying to catch every single football because I didn't want to make my quarterback look bad. And so as the workouts continued to go on and on, the head coach from the Kansas City Chiefs, he began to pull out a yellow notebook pad, and he started in these words during the workouts to me. He started saying, "Good job, Moses. Man, that's the way to catch a football. Good job, Moses." So I'm looking over to my shoulder. I'm like, "Man, that's the head coach from the Chiefs. Man, dude, he just said my name." So Gary, the workout's finished. I go to my chair, I take off my gloves and cleats, and the coach walks up to me. He reaches out his hands, he shakes my hands, and he looks me in the eyes, and he says these words to me: "Moses, today you have just made it into the NFL, man." Garrett, I went in there
That's
just to
crazy.
my quarterback, Sage Rosenfeld, who ended up getting drafted by the Washington Redskins and, of course, played here for the Houston Texans for a few years. I went in to serve him. But isn't it ironic that God blessed me to walk out with the NFL contract that same moment? And there's no coincidence, since that workout, that was back in 2001, I have still been involved with the NFL for over the last 25 years to this day, as a player working in the front office. And now currently I work as a transition coach, and I oversee the state of Texas. So as players retire, I'll help them as they transition out of the NFL. But the amazing part of that story was I went in just to serve a friend, and I walked out with the NFL contract, and I'm still reaping the benefits from just serving a friend. I went into that workout literally with an open hand to give, to help my friend, to serve. And I did not realize that I was going to walk out with an NFL contract. So, which reminds me that at times we live life, man, where we want to live our lives with an open hand. Like if it's serving in your relationship, serving in the community, serving at whatever it is you can serve in, be available to serve. Because when we live our lives with an open hand, that's when those opportunities can literally fall into the palm of your hands. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to have 500,000 business cards trying to go to every single event to network. You ain't got to do none of that. All you got to do is just to be a servant. When we've been through life and life makes us bitter, or we feel emotionally challenged, or we feel hurt or disconnected, or we begin to feel a sense of anger or whatever it is that makes us to close our hands, to me, that's when we close our hands. It's difficult for those opportunities to continue to flow through us. And so what I challenge myself and even my family is, man, continue to live your lives with an open hand. And when we do that, that's when the miracle and those opportunities will come to us that we least didn't see coming. And my opportunity, Garrett, it came I didn't go into that workout thinking, man, this is my chance to be with the Kansas City Chiefs, or man, the NFL is about to pick me up. I had no clue. Only thing that I wanted to do at that time was to serve a friend. And wow, who would ever thought 25 years later, here I am being a part of the NFL.
That's an awesome story and a great example. And I agree. I mean, it's kind of funny or ironic, like the sense that, like, if you try to press too hard, like when you do the inverse and are selfless, you kind of get what you wanted all along. So that's a great message. And I agree. And, I tend to try and be that way, but I know we're all not perfect. So I think it's a great message for all of us. It never helps to, have a reminder with that. But, we're about 40 minutes in. I figured we can probably go till 10 if that's okay with you. About 20 minutes?
Absolutely. This is awesome.
Okay, cool. So if you're
That's
in the chat
perfect.
and you got any football questions, whether about JJ's background or about, current Texan stuff, we'll kind of transition to that. So go ahead and, fire away your comments and we'll get to them. But obviously, I'll just start off with the low-hanging fruit, Iowa State, former receiver. First off, thoughts on the three receivers. And second off, have you had a connection with them yet? Are you able to talk with those guys at all?
Well, first of all, man, I am so excited to see the three wide receivers again. This is not the norm. I mean, who would ever thought you would see three Iowa State receivers that's going to be potential, maybe starters for the Houston Texans? What? It's different if you see three guys from Miami, or you see three guys from, Michigan, or whatever the case might be. But it's been an amazing experience. And I just love what the Texans are doing with Coach DeMeco Ryans and, of course, Nick Caserio. There's a pedigree that they have with the Iowa State, I feel, culture and what they're looking for in terms of players and overall the leadership qualities that all three of these wide receivers from Iowa State have. From Hutchinson, Noel, and Hutchinson is the fact that they are already groomed and they are already prepared to play in the NFL. And as you can tell, just based on some of these preseason games and even training cues, these guys are kind of not doing well. They are actually ready to be plugged in right away. They're hard workers. They know how to accept their challenge, and there's no stage that's too small for them. And I think that's what, Nick Caserio looks for. That's what Coach DeMeco Ryans, and they love guys that are good kids, bringing that positive energy. And I think that's big. And so I did have a chance to Hutchinson, I think last year, and I haven't had a chance to connect with Noel or Hutchinson.
We got to make that happen, man. Like maybe you could interview the three of them. Like that needs to happen. Like you're, former Texan receiver. You're kind of media-ish and you were in different roles. Like that would be an awesome interview, a sit down with them three and you. That would be sick. Or maybe even bring in Sage too. Who knows?
Wow. I love the idea. Maybe we can make that happen. That would be a cool, just an opportunity. I like that idea. Maybe we can roll something like that.
That would be awesome content. And then also too, I don't know if you knew, but Nick Caley was a GA at Iowa State. So you have that, minor connection there as well. But to your point too, I mean, I think basically we hear about this swarm mindset. When they, especially in the draft, they draft guys like you're talking, all three of these Iowa State guys fit that to a T, hard worker, pro ready. And Matt Campbell at Iowa State evidently is doing a great job. And it seems where Nick Caserio has talked about, like, if we find a good program with a good culture, we kind of know what we're going to get. They kind of got some other schools they align with in that way. But also too, like, it seems their offense has been advanced lately, and I guess it's probably more pass heavy offenses in college. It seems like, it's more advanced in the sense of allowing guys freedom to adjust the route based off coverage or read defenses, which, this offense, it does have some New England type elements to it, especially in the slot receiver where you have the freedom to make those decisions, but you also have to make the right decision that the quarterback is also making to be on the same page. So, yeah, Iowa State is great to hear about. But aside from that, I mean, do you have any expectations for this year? I'm looking on the outside looking in.
Do I have any expectations for this year? I do. I that I'm looking forward to just watching is the offensive line protection for the Houston Texans. I had an opportunity when I was working for the Texans. Titus Howard was one of those players that I helped on board as he got into the NFL, and to see his development as time has went on, I think he's definitely going to be one of those leaders on the offensive line to really kind of gel. He's the guy that can line if there's a player. But I think the biggest way that we're going to determine how if this team is able to stay healthy, the progress of CJ Stroud. And also, if you look at the strength of their schedule, I know a lot of times I've heard people say, well, man, they got an easy schedule this year. But in reality, I kind of want to maybe dive deeper into the schedule because they have, I think their bye week, maybe week 6 or week 7. I can't remember, but it's early on. Mm-hmm. But after that bye week, the Texans have 12 straight games in a row. That right there is where I'm hoping that the team can remain healthy, especially if you're running. So for me, as an athlete in the NFL, I always appreciated that bye, maybe midway towards the end, because it helps you as you're kind of finishing up that season. But with them being able to have those 12 straight games in the row and going into the playoffs, I think that's going to be an interesting situation to kind of observe from afar as a fan, but also being able to watch the progress of CJ Stroud. We all know that his sophomore year, it wasn't as what his rookie year was like, but we all know that he's a great guy. He's a great human being. He has all the quality of leading this team, but can he find that way to put the team on his back? But I think the great strength that D'Amico has done was he's created such a powerful defense gear that CJ Stroud doesn't really have to try to win games, so to speak. All he has to really do, if that defense plays to his strength that we all know as Texas fans, if they play to that strength each and every game, all CJ really has to do is manage the game. Make those sharp passes, don't throw any interceptions, hold on to the ball, offensive line blocks. And hey, this Texas team could go deep into the playoffs. But again, it starts with the defense, starts with the O-line. There's many components, but we'll see. And hopefully this team will stay healthy.
That's a great point on the bye week. I mean, last year we had a really late one, and now it's kind of an early one. But, hopefully the goal is, I feel like the beginning of the schedule is easy. So you get off to a hot start, and maybe those last 2 games out of the last 10, you can kind of rest some guys up. And I agree, too, like when talking about, I think that's a common misconception, or we forget to remember this as fans, but like, D'Amico Ryans is the head coach. He's a defensive-minded head coach with an elite top 5, top 3, in my opinion, best defense in the league. And, the way he's coached these past 2 years, it can be somewhat frustrating, which is kind of how I had my name, Houston Stressins, because a lot of the games come out of the wire, so you're stressing out. But, he wants to rely and lean on that defense. He wants to play field position, like you said, kind of conservative. And I feel like I listened to an interview with him or somebody just recently, and they said that D'Amico preaches like, hey, if you have 0 turnovers, your chance of winning is like this high. So basically just not, giving the game away. And then Nick Caley, he brought him in, and his whole philosophy, it sounds like corny and simple, but like we're already seeing it come to fruition. But it's literally, the last 2 years under Slowick, our big Achilles heel was beating ourselves, losing yards on 1st and 2nd down, constantly in 3rd and longs. Our whole emphasis is positive yards, instead of -2, 2 to 3 to 5, and getting to 3rd and manageable. We led the league in, 3rd and 10 plus. So, I mean, you got to at least give yourself a chance. So I agree on those takes there. And I'm excited as well. And I want to mention too, it's kind of interesting. I caught on is you used to be in the front office personnel department with guys coming in, preparing them for the league. but now you're on the back end preparing guys to leave the league. Is that correct? And what is that kind of dynamic like?
It's amazing because I have been so grateful, man, for the opportunity to see the NFL on so many different angles and so many different sides. It's one thing being a player, right? Where you're a player, you understand the the work ethic, the schedule, the teammates, the just overall the atmosphere. You go into the front office, it's a whole new game. It's a whole new set of rules that you have to learn. And again, when I became the director of player development, I was the first Houston Texans player that went into the front office of the Houston Texans organization out of the first 20-some years. And so it was one of those things where it was an eye-opening moment. I was grateful that the late Mr. Bob McNair gave me the opportunity, and he saw fit where he wanted me to become that director of player development. And at that time, the Houston Texans had, it was amazing, man, as far as the roster. That year in 2018, I think we went 11-5. We were just rolling. I mean, everything was looking great, but there was a change in leadership, and they just kind of changed the whole dynamics of the game. But I learned a lot. I built a program, and it was one of those things where the best way that I can describe what helped the growth, or what was the key for me, was being able to build trust within the locker room. And when you built that trust, that's what accelerated the growth of these players. So you got guys like a Justin Reed, who was a rookie when we had drafted him in 2018. And I worked with Justin, and I already knew that Justin had the components because Justin had an older brother that played in the NFL. And he was one of those guys that I really kind of connected with, helped him out. And here he is now. Justin Reed is, of course, a Pro Bowl. Well, I mean, not a Pro Bowl, but he won a Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs, I think, a few years. He's now with the Saints. But again, I'm with so many great players, man, that you're like, man, you can see something in them, and you can see that they're destined to do great things. And that was the fun side of working with current guys that were making it into the NFL and just watching their growth. And then on the backside, you're working with guys as they kind of continue to maybe move forward and saying, what's next for me? What's my purpose? How do I move forward, not as an athlete, but as a husband, as a man, as, a friend, or as a worker, and helping these guys to be intentional about their decision-making, if it's dealing with their finances, if it's overall just helping them to continue to move forward so they can kind of find their highest potential or find their purpose. And again, because the NFL, it stands for not for long. And so no matter how great of a player you are, that time will come that your services are no longer needed. And I think that's where it comes a point in an athlete's life to really decide what's the next thing for them, and how do they continue to move forward and to feel good about themselves, but also that they can continue to grow and to move forward in every aspect.
That's awesome. And both those examples of what you did prior and what you do now go back to what you said earlier, and you're serving others in those roles. So, I mean, kudos to you. That's awesome. We do have a question from Thomas on Facebook. He wants to know what your 40 was coming into the NFL your first year.
Thomas, that's a great question, my friend. Hope all is well and appreciate you, Dan. Thomas wants to know, what's my 40 time in my first year of the NFL? I think at that time I clocked a 4.46 when we had like a little NFL scouts at Iowa State University, but they clocked me at a 4.46. Now, that's not fast, I don't think, because now you got guys that are linebackers that can run a 4.46, and so
but the training's also different too, though.
Yeah. But I was not a blazer. I relied more on my agility and my size as a strength. But that was Thomas. That was my speed, was a 4.46, my friend. But Thomas probably is faster than me, so that's probably why he's Thomas probably.
So what was your 10-yard shuttle?
That's
for the 5.10.5. I mean, that had to be pretty good.
But I think that was my strength right there, was being
probably elusive. Close to a 4 flat or closer, I'd imagine, with that, that agility and that wiggle, huh?
Well, if you say it, I'll take it. Whatever time you said, I'll run with it, man.
Well, I guess, because you did workouts and it wasn't like an official combine, it probably, isn't as big of a sticking point. And then also, too, once you're in, right? I mean, those numbers are just a way to get you in there. So I guess I will ask you, we'll probably wind down here in a second, but is there one memory in the NFL. I guess if you want to give two, I can make it a two-part. One memory that stands out, or story, or brief, whatever, across the NFL that's very memorable, and then maybe one specific to the Texans.
Mm.
Whether it's like a interaction, a play, some crazy
I
story
do.
from a guy doing something crazy, or
Man, and that's why y'all have to read the book, because there's so many great stories from every situation, from every ball club. But a lot of times I would get asked the question, JJ, what was it like, to catch an NFL punt? A lot of times people don't realize the magnitude or of how much pressure it is to catch an NFL. If you know what a punt returner, kick returner is, it's the guy that's standing maybe 50, 60 yards back from the opposing team. And Garrett, at that time, you got 11 guys that's running down full speed. And all they want to do is just run you over. They just want to hit you. And especially with me being a little guy. And so you got those guys, and they look like Hercules, man. Everybody's built like Hercules. And then, as a return man, but my main focus is going back there, man, and catching that ball. I don't have time to be worried. I don't have time to feel the fear. I just have to stay focused. And again, when you're catching a ball at NRG Stadium, and at that time it was called Reliance Stadium, you got the 70,000 fans. They're pumped up, they're cheering. And then you got all the logos and the sponsorship logos all up there. And then you got, the cheerleaders, they're, pumping up the crowd. You got the mascot Toro running up and down the sideline. You got, Fox News, you got KHOU, Channel 13, you got ESPN, you got all those cameras you can hear. And as a return man, bro, you can feel all of that. You could sense it. But my main job was not to look at none of those distractions, Garrett. I had to keep my eyes on the prize, and that was the football. So when that ball was punted up maybe 50, 60 miles per hour, and it was 100, 200 some feet in the air, my main job was to catch the ball. And so when that ball was punted up, everything got quiet in the stadium. I could not hear anything. You can literally drop a dime and I can hear it, because that's how poised and focused I was, because I knew that if I dropped the ball, it could possibly cost me maybe my job, or maybe it could possibly cost me my career in the NFL. And by me securing that football, the magnitude is I have coaches, players, and everyone else that's involved within the organizations. Their livelihood is on me catching the ball, because if we're losing, and if I'm back there dropping the balls, somebody's getting cut. Teams are losing, and that's the biggest way to get out of the NFL. And so I felt all of that. And then on top of that, as a return man, I had to make split decisions within seconds, whether or not if I wanted to fair catch it, whether if I not I wanted to go left, right, or whether if I not I wanted the ball to go over me and to let it bounce back into the end zone. So you're talking about making quick decisions, and you have to be so decisive. And for me, I have learned that ability is to not hesitate in life. That's a great example to live by. And so there's times in my life where, just based out of football, I've learned certain illustrations or principles that has helped me in the business realm, that has helped me in my career. And being a return man has given me that mindset that whatever I'm dealing with the situation, sometimes even if you get it wrong, even if it doesn't work out, one thing that you won't catch me doing is being hesitant. And I believe, Garrett, when individuals see that you are not operating out of hesitivity, or you're not hesitant, what it shows people, what it can show your boss, what it can show your coaches, what it can show whoever, is that you're self-assured and that you're confident. And for me, that's all about this focus, this prepare to win mindset. When we can show individuals that we're self-assured, we're confident, because once we embody that, man, that's the key. That's all up in here. And that's what gives you that ability to win.
That's awesome. It's kind of cool how you tie it all together. And we got a comment from Abdul Adghani on Instagram. It's on my other monitor here, but he said it's a great live, great guest, great dude. He said he was able to talk to you earlier this summer, and you gave a lot of advice, and he learned even more during this live. So shout out Abdul for that.
Abdul, what's up?
But yeah, so I mean, I don't want to keep you too long, but just to like finish up on that, like, yeah, I feel like people don't realize how, I guess people do, you just forget because you watch the game easy on the couch, but like catching a punt, like you just detail, that's not easy, bro. And then not only that, like all the external factors, and you mentioned too, like you can easily lose sight of the ball with like empty seats or whatever and signs. But you
Yeah,
also probably have to look at the angle of the ball, correct? Right, the nose is up, it's going to keep going. If it's down, it's going to be short. Like, was it also hard to gauge where it's going to be? And then also you have external factors in open stadiums like wind, and then different punters hit the ball different
absolutely.
ways and have different spins. So like, there's a lot that goes into it, correct?
Absolutely. And you just hit the nail on the head, Gear. It's so many variables. There's sometimes you got a left-footed punter. So therefore the ball and the trajectory of that ball is going to be a total different from a right-footed punter. Some punters punt sideline to sideline. Then there's it's a situation where certain stadiums, and I can't remember, it's built in a certain way where it makes to catch the ball. And if it's an open roof or if it's a closed roof, you got a lot of times if the ball's being punted up and it's a 11 or 12 o'clock game, the sun is pretty much all the way, right at front, right at the top part of the sky. And so that ball and the whole view of that ball, you can't see for a few seconds. So you have so many different situations that most people don't realize that a returner has to deal with in order just to catch the ball, let alone score a touchdown. We're talking about just catching a ball. And so that's where I really just honed into that craft of just catching the ball and really focusing in on that primary thing. And that was the key, man, that really opened the door for me because I stayed focused. And again, it goes back to, you see a lot of returners in the NFL or even in college, they don't realize it, but they're operating out of that sprezzatura lifestyle where they make that role, that job look so natural, so effortless. You wouldn't even think about it. They'll go back there, fair catch the ball, and they'll
Insane.
give the ball to the referee, and then the offense comes on, and you're like, oh, no big deal. That was no big thing. But if you are a return man and you played this game, you understand, oh no, that's sprezzatura right there to make it. That was not.
I tried a couple in college and I was not good. We'll put it that way. So I definitely know. But I don't know if you heard about it. You froze for a second, but yeah, just like on
Okay.
the punt returns too. So like with Braxton Berrios, when we signed him, and like something I've been arguing, like, is to your point, it's not as easy as you think. And then everyone assumes, oh yeah, we'll just get the fastest, biggest home run hitting guy and make him that guy. But reliability and first and foremost, catching the ball is the most important. And so I feel like, a lot of coaches, specifically D'Amico Ryans, they still value a guy that they can rely upon. Like Robert Woods was returning punts for us at times, and he wasn't fast and explosive, but because they could trust him to catch the ball, one, two, make the right decision. Like you mentioned, if it's, close to being a touchback, feet on the 10, letting it go, not go, like you can also lose a lot of net yards by making the incorrect decision. And so for me, Braxton Berrios is a veteran guy who's proven and established in that. And so I think he'll have a role in this team because of that, as well as kick return. And obviously Jalen Knoll, seems and is more dynamic, faster, quicker, whatever. But I feel like, he probably will get a spot on the roster because of that. Is there a great value in having a consistent, reliable guy?
Absolutely. You cannot underestimate dependability in the NFL, man. When you're dependable, when the coaches trust you, when you've earned their trust, because it's not given. You have to earn it. And it's so ironic that trust is earned each and every day at practice. It's earned of how you operate yourself in the meeting rooms. It's earned how you go out and practice. It's earned how, if you're a great teammate, it's earned how you treat your staff. All of those components is being heavily reviewed. And when you're bringing in these guys like from a D'Amico Ryans or Nick Cassero and you're putting them into that culture, they are aware, they're watching. And when you earn the trust of the coaches and the staff, man, the sky's the limit. And I think that also embodies and empowers the younger athlete, because when they're doing things the right way, man, for some reason, Gear, things typically go the right way. The ball sometimes bounces the right way because you're doing things the right way as an organization, as a player on the team. And so I just really believe that the way a player lives their lives off the field has a tremendous impact on the way that they play on the football field. And so that's why I'm excited for our Houston Texans. I think they've done a great job of bringing in great guys, but not only great guys, but guys that worked hard, that got this grit, that got the juice, that got this swag. And when you combine all those things, those components, man, that's right there a great probability of maybe a championship team, but we shall see,
I
man.
agree, and it makes them easy to root for, and it's an exciting time. So we'll wrap it up here. But again, before we go, JJ's book is Focus. It's on Amazon. There's a link in the bio here, and I also posted it on my socials, and I'll share it again. I can't wait to read it myself. And then he's on Instagram. He's at JJ Moses on the bottom. What is the number? I believe at JJ Moses. It's coming on the ticker here in a second. Do you know your Instagram handle? It kind of froze for a second. It's at JJ Moses 32 on.
But AJ Moses.
Sorry, at JJ Moses 32 on Instagram, and then you have a website as well, correct? www.jjmoses.com.
I have that one, but I typically put a lot of stuff not on the website right now, but it's really pretty much on the Instagram. I'm on that pretty much regularly. So if there's any questions or anything that I can continue to serve our Houston community, you guys feel free to shoot me comments. And anything that I can do for our Texas fans, man, I'm always here, man. So let's go.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate it. I'll end it here and we can say our goodbyes after. There's one quick question from Thomas. I think I know the answer from you from this. He just asked, I believe CJ is the real deal. What do you think?
Thomas, I think right there, you just said it, man. I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, when you say that CJ is the real deal, I really believe that. And I think all of us as Texas fans, we see a component in CJ that we haven't seen in a quarterback for a long time. I think the biggest thing that I like about CJ is that he's so far been so cool and collective, and he seems like he's a great overall guy, human being. He loves, his players, guys gravitate towards him. He seems great to communicate with, even in his tough or difficult games. He's not blaming coaches. He's not blaming players. And he seems like he always keeps his head up. And I think that right there is a pedigree for a great career in the NFL. And I think the biggest thing that I want to just kind of maybe keep my fingers crossed and keep prayers for him is that he just stays healthy. And, when you're a quarterback in this game, you just never know. And you just always wish the health for these players and that they continue to make great decisions and take care of their bodies and do everything that they can do so they can, help the team to kind of propel moving forward in this football season ahead. So I do think he's a real deal.
I agree 1,000%. And he's a very easy guy to root for, and we're very blessed to have him. So that's all we got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. Like we said, check out JJ's book, and I'll be posting more info on that. Until next time, be blessing.